All right, let's get started here on a Wednesday night. The Panther-Lair Show. I believe you can see me. I believe you can hear me. I hope both of those things are true, and if they're not, I'm sure you'll tell me right quick as we get started here on this Wednesday night. The first Wednesday post-spring, the first Wednesday of the second off-season, I guess you want to call it that. I never called it that before, but I guess you could, right? The first off-season started at the end of the bowl games, and then the second off-season starts now, really, when spring camp ends. And, of course, ended with the blue-gold game on Saturday at Heinz Field. We've got a lot to talk about on that front. And, I mean, really, that's kind of the main topic here tonight. I mean, all I've been thinking about this week is writing recaps of spring camp and kind of where the team stands coming out of spring camp. I've written a lot about it on Panther-Lair.com. I'm going to continue writing a lot about it on Panther-Lair.com. I mean, we can talk some recruiting if you want. We can talk transfer portal stuff if you want. You can post those questions here in the live stream in the chat screen right there if you want to throw those out there. But I'm kind of thinking about football a lot right now. I'm thinking about the end of the spring camp that we just saw wrap up right now. And if you read Panther-Lair.com, I mean, that's what you're reading a lot about right now is the end of Pitt football spring camp. Of course, the website Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. It's the most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news on the internet, football, basketball, recruiting. You find it all at Panther-Lair.com. And, of course, message boards where you can interact with hundreds and thousands of your closest Pitt fan friends. Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com is the website. And, you know, I kind of the thing I always say is that we get together on Wednesday nights and do this show, and it's an hour of Pitt sports talk, and it's fun. We have a back and forth. You guys post messages and comments and questions, and I read them and interact to them. You know, you respond to what I'm saying or react to what I'm saying. I react to what you're saying, and we have that back and forth. But the reality is, I mean, that is going on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the message boards at Panther-Lair.com. Message boards often get a bad rap, and sometimes they deserve it. But what it ultimately gives you a chance to do is talk with other Pitt fans about Pitt sports topics. You know, you read some of the content we put out there, the articles, the interviews, the analysis, and all those things. And you read articles elsewhere, you read them in the newspaper or other websites or whatever it is, and then you go to the message boards and talk about it. You know, you consume the content and then you discuss it with other Pitt fans. It's kind of That's what the fun is. You know what I mean? The fun is reading and consuming the content and then talking about it with other Pitt fans. And that's what you get a chance to do at Panther-Lair.com. Panther-Lair.com. Pittsburgh.rivals.com. That's the website. And certainly there was a lot of conversation, I mean, over the weekend in the aftermath of the blue-gold game and even beyond, you know, I mean, through the week, we've continued to discuss it. I'm sort of going position by position in our recaps of spring camp. Got quarterback, running back, receiver out already. Tight end will come out on Thursday. O-line, I mean, you know, we'll run down the whole thing. We'll go through all the positions and write down, we'll share thoughts on all of those spots and what we saw at a spring camp and kind of what the storylines were, what we learned about each position, and where things really stand coming out of the spring. But a lot of the conversation, obviously, has been centered around the blue-gold game on Saturday. And, you know, I think last Wednesday night, I talked a lot about what that blue-gold game was really going to look like. I talked about it on the Panthers Insider Show on 93.7 The Fan on Saturday morning about what the blue-gold game was going to look like. And I don't think it was any surprise that it ended up looking like that. I mean, I think if you've watched these spring games under Pat Narduzzi over the last few years, I mean, over the last 7 years, this is 8 now. I mean, you knew what to expect. You knew what it was going to look like, and it wasn't going to be pretty. You knew that it was going to be not a lot of offense, not a lot in the way of offensive momentum or offensive rhythm or continuity or anything like that, because everything's all mixed up and jumbled up, or to use Pat Narduzzi's word, mishmashed, was, I believe, the word. Yep, Narduzzi's right on the screen there. And, he used the word mishmashed, and that's what it was. You know, the receivers all mixed up, quarterbacks thrown to all different receivers, most specifically the offensive line being all jumbled up. We talked about it last Wednesday night. They would really only have 2 projected starters available in the spring game. Carter Warren and Marcus Minor are the only ones who played. Owen Drexel was out, Jake Cradle was out, Gabe Hoy was out. And it doesn't seem like any of those guys should be out, should still be out in August or into the season. It seems like they should be able to get those guys back. But for the spring game, where you're already going to mix and match the offensive line and end up with a bunch of starters, playing against each other, basically, a couple on this side, a couple on that side. In this case, there were only 2 starters who were even available. The other guys weren't even there to be chosen. And so it got even more difficult. And then you throw in the other factor, which we didn't really talk about, which is that not only do you have the offensive line all mixed up, not only are you already missing 3 starters from the offensive line, and Branson Taylor, who's going to be a 2-deep guy, probably a backup, one of the top backups at tackle. You're missing all those guys. You've got all the groups mixed up, and everything's difficult. And there we have Charlie Partridge on the screen, and it's perfect because not only do you have all those O-line issues, but you're also facing a really good group of defensive linemen. Habakkuk Baldonado played a decent amount. John Morgan played a lot. Deion Hayes played a lot. And these guys were all over the place. These guys were making plays in the backfield and making life difficult. They finished with, what was the total? 7 sacks between the two teams. 4 sacks for the blue defense, 3 sacks for the gold, 12 tackles for loss in total, 6 for each. That sums it up. And that's a testament to a really good defensive line that's deep and talented against an offensive line missing 3 starters, playing without any of the continuity and cohesiveness that are crucial to effective offensive line play. And you kind of got what you bargained for. You get what you pay for in these situations. And, well, it's not a surprise that what happened, which is a 10-7 game where I didn't even add up how many yards of total offense there were. 275 yards of total offense between the two teams. And they were playing short quarters. Well, they played 12-minute quarters or 10-minute quarters, something like that. And so it was short. It was going to be not a ton of time. Were they 10, 11-minute quarters, 12-minute quarters, whatever it is. So you aren't going to get as much offense, but 275 yards between the two teams combined. That, again, is a testament to the defensive line. It's a testament to how the offensive line was jumbled up, and also the vanilla offensive playbook. And these were all things that we talked about last Wednesday. We didn't talk as much about the defensive line, but we talked about the offensive line issues that were going to be there for a variety of reasons. We talked about how you're going to have personnel mix-ups all over the place, and a vanilla offensive playbook. And when you put all those things into a pot and stir it up and pour it out, you're going to get what you got on Saturday, which is 275 yards of offense and 2 touchdowns, both rushing touchdowns, by the same guy, one for each team. Which also, the fact that Daniel Carter logged carries for both teams. What did he end up with? 4 for the gold and 6 for the blue, and about 30 or so yards and a touchdown for each team. I mean, it goes to show you kind of how seriously the coaches take this. And I think they do make some evaluations off of this thing. I think they do look at it and say, well, this guy played well, or that guy had a good spring camp or spring game, or this guy did, or that guy did. We liked the play this guy made, we liked the play that guy made. I mean, I think we all know that the 14 practices prior to the spring game, those 14 practices will obviously loom a lot larger for the coaches heading into the summer than what they saw in the Blue Gold game on Saturday at Heinz Field. Any personnel decisions they make, the depth chart as they order it heading into training camp in August, I mean, that's going to be based on those first 14 practices of spring camp and the scrimmages that they held behind, under the cover of night. I mean, not really at night, but behind closed doors during spring camp. Those are the things that are ultimately going to make the personnel decisions, or at least inform the coach's opinions on the players heading into the summer and then heading into training camp in August. Far more than what we saw on Saturday. And so there's always that caution that you have to have, that caveat of, look, the Blue Gold game is what it is. Don't take too much out of it. You can kind of take what you want. I think pick out the good things. Like Bengali Kamara looked really good. John Morgan had a really good Blue Gold game. Who else did I see that put up some good numbers? Kamara had 1.5 sacks. Morgan had 2 sacks and 2.5 tackles for loss. David Green got a sack. Kalijah Cansey got a sack. Yeah, you can bet on Kalijah Cansey being good. You can count on that. Shane Simon with an interception, which was not a good play by Keaton Slovis, but credit to Shane Simon for picking it off and finishing with 5 tackles, which is tied for the most of anyone in the game. You can take those positives and say, well, this guy looked good. He made some nice plays. Konate Mumfield, right? How much do we talk about him? How much do we talk about him back in December and January? How much did we talk about him over the past few weeks of being one of the guys who's really going to make plays for this team? First play of the game, he gets a 55-yard pass from Nick Patty. So, Jared Wayne ends up with a 43-yard catch and run. You can take those positives from it, but you don't want to overstate what it all means. And of course, that's been a big part of the discussion and the debate over the last 4 days since the blue gold game. Lots of people saying, well, I saw this or I saw that, and then people yelling at them, don't you think anything, don't make any opinions from the blue gold game, you don't know what you're talking about. And I just laugh. I mean, I'm not going to go down that path too far, but fans get a chance to watch their team. I think we talked about it last week. I mean, that was the one opportunity you had to watch Pitt football in some incarnation between the bowl game and the backyard brawl. Between the Peach Bowl and the backyard brawl. Between the bowl and the brawl. That was your only opportunity to see that team live and in person for the vast, vast, vast majority of fans. And so, of course, they're going to talk about it. Of course, there are going to be conversations about that. It's inevitable, even if we all understood and understand what the blue gold game really was and how to take it for what it is. So, all that being said, what did we really see on Saturday? What did we understand? I think the first thing everybody was looking at was the quarterbacks. And I'll even go to the chat screen here because I saw somebody came in as a super chatter, Jake Pagliaro. I apologize if I pronounced that wrong. But he says, Chris, who's quarterback 1, and should JT Daniels transferring to West Virginia worry Pitt fans? So on the question of the quarterback 1, I'll say this. Look, in December, when Keaton Slovis announced he was going to transfer to Pitt, I believe that he did so with the intention of being the starter. I believe when Pitt recruited him, they did so with the intention of him being the starter. When you got into January and February, I said the same thing. We got into March and April, I'm saying the same thing, that he came here to be the starter. The coaches recruited him to be the starter. Now, that doesn't mean that they didn't invite competition. They wanted competition. They wanted Nick Patty to battle Keaton Slovis. They wanted Keaton Slovis to win the job, or Nick Patty to win the job. They wanted one of those guys to emerge as the starter, as clearly taking the reins and leading the offense. I think Keaton Slovis has better pure talent, more upside. There's something to be said for Nick Patty and his ability to get the ball to the receivers, his ability to be kind of a gamer. You know what I mean? He's made a few sort of, I don't want to say on-the-fly plays, but I think in each of the games where he's played significant time, he's made some positive contributions. You go back to the UCF game in 2019. Kenny Pickett gets hurt. Nick Patty comes in and throws a touchdown pass. The Delaware game a week later, Pickett sits out. It was way too close, but the coaches tried to play it as close to the vest as possible. They tried to be as conservative as possible. Patty's job was to manage the game, and he more or less did that and ended up with a win. The next time he really saw significant playing time was in the Florida State game in 2020, where he basically came in as a goal line Wildcat quarterback, and he ran for 2 touchdowns that day. Couldn't get it the third time, but he got it the first 2. And then the Peach Bowl. And I'll maintain to this day, I'll believe to this day, that if Nick Patty doesn't get hurt on that second drive of the game when he's running for a touchdown, Pitt wins that game. If Nick Patty plays the whole game, he wins that game. I've talked to different people, around Pitt, and I think that's the strong opinion, is that if Nick Patty doesn't get hurt, they win that game because they knew. I think they had a feel for what Michigan State was doing. They prepped well. They knew what to expect, and they knew how to handle it and react to it. Davis Bevell just didn't do a good job with it. He didn't read the defense well. He didn't react to and respond to the defense well, even though the coaches and players felt like they had a good plan in to beat it. There's, I think Kenny Pickett definitely wins that game, and I'm pretty confident that Nick Patty wins that game. Shoot, if that first kickoff, remember Izzy Benakanda let it bounce. Game opening kickoff, and it bounces and dies at like the 2. If they don't even do that, if it's just a regular kickoff and it's a touchback that goes out to the 25, and I think they have an opportunity for a full regular drive, and they probably get points out of that. I think Pitt's offense could beat Michigan State's defense with their starting quarterback or their backup quarterback. They weren't able to beat Michigan State's defense with their third team quarterback. It was a bridge too far, so to speak. But my point is, Nick Patty has shown a knack for, when he gets into games, making plays to win games, or making plays. Let's say that. Because he is only, he only has one win as a starter. He's 1-1 as a starter, if you want to count the Peach Bowl as he did start the game and Pitt lost, but he played 2 drives. He's shown himself to be a bit of a gamer. He's shown himself to have, maybe some of that ability. And that's great. You like to see that. You like guys who step up when the lights turn on and they can make plays in the heat of the moment. They got that kind of moxie, and I think the rest of the team respects him. But I think Kedon Slovis has the better overall talent. I think he has the better overall skill set. I think he has higher upside. I think he's got a stronger arm. I think he's got better touch. Patty can probably run a little bit better than Slovis, but I don't think Slovis is terrible when he moves around a little bit. And I think, and he's certainly got the longer resume too. Kedon Slovis has thrown for 7,000 yards and 50-some touchdowns. Nick Patty has not. In his limited playing time. So, I think everything points to Slovis. Everything pointed to Slovis heading into spring camp. And there was nothing I really heard, on the record or off the record, throughout spring camp that changed my opinion on that or changed my thinking about it. I was not surprised that Pat Narduzzi said little to nothing about the quarterbacks throughout spring camp. I have something funny coming up. You'll have to check the 3-2-1 column on Friday on Panther-Lair.com. I did something that I think is pretty funny regarding Pat Narduzzi and his refusal to talk about the 2 quarterbacks, about Kedon Slovis and Nick Patty. I'm not going to give too much of it away, but I hope you find it as funny as I do. It's not laugh out loud funny, but it's a hearty chuckle, funny, a guffaw, a chortle, if you will. But it's no surprise to me that Narduzzi had no interest whatsoever in naming a starter by the end of spring camp. And you know what? I'm pretty sure if we went back to the beginning of camp, even before camp started, I probably said, Pat Narduzzi's not going to name a starting quarterback this spring. Because, there was no reason to. There was no upside in doing it. There was nothing to be gained by naming a starter over these 6 weeks of spring camp practices. Because there's really only downside. Because if you name a starter, if you pick one of these guys and say, that's my guy, you run a pretty significant, a very real risk of the guy you don't pick saying, all right, cool, good luck to you, vaya con Dios, I'm going to go find somewhere I can start. And that's just the reality. And it's not an indictment on anybody. It's just, that's what college football is. Particularly when you're talking about 2 guys who are 4th and 5th year players in Slovis and Patty. These guys have no reason to sit around and be the backup if they have an opportunity to go somewhere else. And so I think, and I don't want to say that Pat Narduzzi refused to name a starter just because he was afraid of guys transferring. I think he wanted to hold off on naming a starter because he wants guys to keep competing. He wants guys to push each other. He wants one quarterback to push the other and vice versa. He wants a battle. He wants a competition. Because he believes that'll bring out the best in the players, and I think he's right. I think it probably will. And so that's probably his primary motivation. But the reality is, you have to be thinking about the transfer portal. And I'll tell you something funny. And this is something that sort of just occurred to me over the last year or two. But I can't help it when I am participating in an interview session, particularly with Pat Narduzzi, the assistant coaches to some extent as well. And we're talking about this or that. We ask about this player. We ask about that player. And Narduzzi will talk about that player and then sort of abruptly interject a comment about another player at that position. Maybe someone else who doesn't get talked about as much. Someone else who maybe doesn't appear as high on the depth chart. And he'll bring up this other guy and say, and this guy's doing really good too. He's going to do a lot for us. He's really going to play a lot. We're really excited about him too. And this started to happen over the last, it probably has happened since Narduzzi got here, but I feel like I just noticed it in the last 2 years. And always in my mind, I'm always like, well, he wants to make sure that guy doesn't transfer. It's just a product of the times. It really is, because guys transfer. You know what I mean? Guys who are not on the 2 deep transfer. Not all of them, but a lot of them. And enough that if you are a coach and you want to maintain your depth, you have to be aware of that. You have to be cognizant of it, and you don't want to live in fear of it, but anything you can do to at least attempt to prevent it, you do. And so you want to make sure, I think as a coach, you want to make sure that there's never any point where your public comments could possibly be construed as something that could cause a player to decide to leave. You know what I mean? You don't even want to slip up and say something that a guy might read and be like, oh man, really? That's where I am? I got to get out of here. I'm behind these guys. I'm not doing as well as that guy. Coach didn't even mention me when he talked about this position or that position. I got to go. I got to leave. And I don't think that drives everything that coaches say. But in my mind, when I hear certain comments, it's the first thing I think of. Like, oh, I guess he's worried about that guy transferring. Even if he's not. It's just the world today. And I think Jeff Capel, a little bit, I kind of felt that with him too. But Narduzzi more, just because sometimes he'll just bring up guys out of random. You know what I mean? Out of nowhere. and it's the worst thing too when you ask about someone specifically, and you get one sentence out of because you want to write about that player, you want to write something about that player, and you get one sentence out of the quote that's about that guy, and the rest of the quote is about all the other guys because they want to make sure they mention everyone because they don't want anybody to transfer. This is at least how I perceive it in my head. It's probably not actually that way, but that's kind of that's how I perceive it. So. Long-winded way to get back around to Jake's question here about who is quarterback 1. I think right now, Pat Narduzzi is sincere when he says that there's no starter named yet, that both guys are battling and all those things. Frank Cignetti said the same thing. But I think if they had to play a game tomorrow, I think Kedon Slovis would probably be the starter. I think he would. And that's, probably he's probably the guy who gives the team the best chance to win, the highest upside. And it's, one of the things Pat Narduzzi has been really fond of saying all spring is that he feels like they have 2 quarterbacks they can win with. And I think there's some truth to that. I really do. I think even if you want to talk about Nick Patty with the kind of funky throwing motion and weird sort of athleticism, but just sort of knack for getting it done, with these running backs, these receivers, these tight ends, or at least Gavin Bartholomew, and I think some of the other guys will emerge, this offensive line and this defense, I think Nick Patty could win a bunch of games. I really do. I think you could win games with both of those quarterbacks, Nick Patty and Kedon Slovis. The question, I think, is who gives you more upside? Who can not just win because he's a competent quarterback, an average or above average quarterback who can get the ball to all these playmakers, but who's the guy who can even elevate a step above that and make big plays himself? And I don't just mean running, but I mean the big time throws that you need to make to win games. The things that Kenny Pickett did last year that led Pitt to 11 wins in an ACC championship. I think having solid, competent quarterback play can get you pretty far. It got Pitt to 10 wins in 2009 because they had a really smart coordinator who happens to be here again. They had some really good playmakers and they got the ball to them, and they had a really stout defense. 2009, that team went 10-3. And that was a pretty good season. It was disappointing at the time because they fell short of the Big East championship, but it was a pretty good season. Then he did it with a quarterback in Bill Stahl, who I don't think you would say was an exceptional quarterback. I don't think you would say that he was, he did not have the season that Kenny Pickett had this past year. But he was competent. He was average to above average, and he was able to he got the ball to the guys who can make plays. I think Nick Patty can do those kinds of things for you. I'd be interested to get an honest assessment of the comparison from Frank Signetti between Nick Patty and Bill Stahl. Not that I don't think they're similar in their style of play, but sort of their competency, I guess, would be the best way to put it, as far as being able to get the ball to those playmakers. Whereas Stahl had Dion Lewis and Doran Dickerson and Jonathan Baldwin, Patty or Slovis will have Abanikanda and Hammond and Davis and Carter, and Addison and Wayne and Mumfield and Bradley and Barton and Bartholomew. So I actually think this is a better collection of skill players this year than Bill Stahl had in 2009, but you get my point. I think when you have really good talent all over the offense like this, and a really good offensive line, that's what they had in 2009 as well, I think you can win a pretty good amount with competent quarterback play, average to above average quarterback play. The question is, do you have a guy who can not just do that, but be a step above that and make those big time throws and those big time plays to not just get you to 10 wins, but maybe, to get you another ACC championship. And I think you need that higher upside to ultimately compete at that level and maybe even push through to be at that next level. I think you need that higher upside, and that's what I think Kedon Slovis is. So, yeah, long way to answer your question there, Jake. But, who's quarterback one right now? Nobody. They're dead heat. But I think Kedon Slovis is probably the guy who, if they were playing a game, tomorrow night, if tomorrow night was Thursday, September 1st, I think it would be Kedon Slovis. Should JT Daniels transferring to West Virginia worry Pitt fans? I mean, I'm not going to count anybody out. He's obviously a talented player, former Georgia quarterback who transferred from USC, but kind of like I just said there, this is his second transfer. This is the second time he hasn't been able to win a job, and he's transferred to leave. And, there is some full circle thing going on here where JT Daniels left USC because Kedon Slovis won the starting job. And it's kind of funny to see that kind of come full circle, and now they're presumably going to be facing off head-to-head in the season opener on September 1st. I think if JT Daniels was really all that, he would have caught on at some point. He would have caught on at USC. It would have caught on at Georgia. It hasn't happened for him yet, and now he's going to West Virginia. I don't know, but I don't want to rule anybody out. You know what I mean? I think there is some natural talent there. It's a bunch of coaches have thought very highly of him over throughout his football playing career. But I'm to your question, Jake, should JT Daniels transferring to West Virginia worry Pitt fans? I would say not yet. We'll find out on September 1st, I guess. All right, we had another super chatter jump in. RJC Man 38. Appreciate him coming in as a super chatter. Says the spring game was boring. Yeah, I mean, look, it was an opportunity to see. It was an opportunity to see Pitt football play, or to see Pitt play football. I don't know. It is what it is. I mean, if you feel like it's boring, there wasn't a lot of offense. It was 275 yards of offense. There were 17 points scored. There were 2 touchdowns. It wasn't exciting in that regard. Defense looked pretty good. Offense was kind of a mess. That's what we expected. RJC Man 38 also says, can Pitt get a top 15 recruiting class next year? It seems a lot of 4-stars are giving Pitt a look. I don't know about a top 15 class. I think that's tough. I think you need to really load the class with 4 stars and 1 or 2, and maybe a 5-star or 2. I think it's going to be tough for Pitt to get quite to that level. I think if they can end up in the top 25, that'll be really good. I think if they can if they can crack the top 20, that would be an outstanding finish for Pitt. Can they do it with this 2023 recruiting class? I think a big part of it's going to come down to the numbers. We've talked about this before. Rivals has tried to standardize for the longest time. So Rivals ranks recruiting classes, team recruiting classes on kind of a quantitative with a quantitative method, right? Where each recruit is worth a certain amount of points based on their star ranking and their overall ranking and all those things. And then you add up all the points, and whichever team has the most points, they're the number one recruiting class in the country. And what would happen is teams would sign like 29 guys, and you could have a team with 15 5-stars and a team with 29 3-stars, and the 29 3-stars are gonna probably win out in points, I would think. Even though the team with 15 5-stars is obviously much better. I don't know if the math actually checks out on that, but you get my point. That you'd rather have. You don't want the volume of that 29-man class to, cause the recruiting rankings to not properly reflect what the classes actually look like. So they tried to standardize it down. So they only count your top 20 highest-rated recruits. Those are the guys whose points count for your point total, and that's what you get compared to. Your top 20 versus my top 20 versus their top 20 versus their top 20. And if you only have 16 or you only have 18 or you only have 17 or whatever it is, that's what gets compared. I would think Pitt's going to go over 20 this year, but we'll see. It's always tough to project because you don't know how many super seniors are going to come back, and those numbers are getting lower each year, but there's still possibilities out there that could return. You don't know which of those guys are going to come back. You don't know what kind of recruiting class size you're going to have. You have a general idea, but you're not entirely sure. So that's going to impact the final recruiting ranking. And I just don't know if Pitt is in a position to crack the top 15 just yet. Top 25 should absolutely be the target. Top 20 would be a great class, without a doubt. Michael B., one of our regular super chatters, says, "Hi, Chris, 2 questions for you. First, do you see any chance Pitt can get another series together with Penn State like West Virginia? Also, do you have any confidence in Capel with the portal? Looks like we won't be getting ACC types." Can Pitt get another series together with West Virginia? I mean, I don't see it happening until after. So they just announced this new West Virginia series that's going to start up. So right now they're on a 4-game series, 22, 23, 24, 25. They're going to start it up again. They just announced this today, 29, 30, 31, and 32. So that takes them up to 2032 with the West Virginia games. If you look at the schedule from here on out, basically... So not counting Notre Dame, all right, because Notre Dame will be sprinkled into Pitt's schedule. Let's see, when do they have Notre Dame? They go to Notre Dame next year, 2023. They have Notre Dame at home in 25. They have Notre Dame at home in 28. Home in 31. I'm reading off FBschedules.com, which is a great future football schedules site. Home in 31, road in 33, home in 34, road in 2036. So, I mean, these Notre Dame games are scattered throughout as part of the deal with the ACC. Those years, I think Pitt will add a second Power 5 opponent. Most years, they'll try to avoid having 2. So, this coming year, they have West Virginia and Tennessee, kind of finishing the Tennessee series from last year, and then starting this current West Virginia series. Next year, they'll have West Virginia and Notre Dame both on the road. So, that's going to be a challenge. But again, Notre Dame kind of doesn't count because you go to 2024 and West Virginia is the only Power 5 opponent. 25, West Virginia and Notre Dame. 26 and 27, they only have one Power 5 opponent scheduled right now. That's Wisconsin. They have home and road and home, 26 and 27. And then you get that 4-game West Virginia series, 29 through 32. So my point being, I don't see them adding Penn State in the how many years is that between West Virginia games? 1, 2, 3 years between West Virginia games. Because they've got Wisconsin in 26 and 27. I don't think they would play Penn State either one of those years. And double up Penn State and Wisconsin. I don't see them doubling up Penn State and West Virginia. So 29 through 32 would be out. You get on the other side of that, now you're into 2033. To me, that would be the earliest they could possibly get Penn State back on the books. But adding this 4-game series with West Virginia, I wouldn't be surprised if they then extend it beyond that. Or maybe they take another 2-year break or 3-year break in between, add somebody like another Wisconsin type or a Tennessee type, just to break it up, and then get another 4-year West Virginia series on the books. At this point, and I understand there's a leadership change at Penn State that's happening. At this point, I've given up on thinking that Penn State... I shouldn't say I've given up on thinking that Penn State has any interest in playing Pitt. We know that they say they don't have any interest in playing Pitt. I've given up on thinking that Penn State's going to make any real effort to make it happen. And if they do, I'll be pleasantly surprised. I don't expect it. All right, so when I look at Pitt's future schedules and I see, you got West Virginia for 4 years here. You get Wisconsin for 2 years after that. You get 1 year where you have Notre Dame. Maybe you add somebody else to that year, but if it's me, I don't want to double up on Power 5 opponents in any year, unless Notre Dame is one of those two. Now, you could double up in 2028 when they play Notre Dame, but the problem is if you agree to like a 2-game series with someone, you're either, if you agree to a 2-game series with someone, so you have another Power 5 opponent that year when you have Notre Dame, you're either adding another game the year before that when you're already playing Wisconsin, or the year after when you're already playing West Virginia. And I just don't think they want to do it, and I don't think they should. I don't think you need to play 2 Power 5 opponents, again, unless one is Notre Dame with this, the obligation through the ACC. I think you just want to keep it to 1 Power 5 opponent, your FCS opponent, and then 2, FBS. Even if it's like 2024 where they have, West Virginia as Power 5, Youngstown State is the FCS, and they have Kent State and at Cincinnati. And Cincinnati's a good, good non-Power 5 opponent, but I guess, yeah. I guess at that point there'll be Big 12 in it, right? But you understand what I'm saying. When that was scheduled, it's an AAC team. I don't think you want to have too many of those times when you have 2 Power 5 opponents in the same year. So I don't see Penn State, long story short, I don't see Penn State before 2033. And honestly, I just don't know if I even see it happening again then. That's 10 years away, though. Who knows what the sport will look like? Who knows what the rest of the world will look like, in 2033. Michael B's other question, do you have any confidence in Jeff Capel with the portal? Looks like we won't be getting ACC types. I wouldn't. So it's really tough to judge portal additions. If you see a guy, you get somebody transferring from North Carolina who was a starter playing 30 minutes a game or something. Okay, yeah, you got an ACC player. But just because you pull guys from the mid-major level or even a low-major level doesn't mean you're not getting an ACC player. I can't automatically rule it out. I think, there are really good there are players who could play at the ACC. There are players who could play in the ACC through all levels of college basketball. I think you can find guys all over the place. I can't rule out the possibility of Jeff Capel finding ACC players. I think Nelly Cummings can play in the ACC. I think is he an ACC level point guard? I don't know, but I think he's close enough that he'll help Pitt. You know what I mean? I think he's close enough that he'll fit with what Pitt wants to do and what Pitt needs to do. And I have confidence that Jeff Capel can find a few more guys like that. I think he can find, I don't know if you're going to find another Mo Gee, but he can try. And Mo Gee was an ACC level player who came from Stony Brook. So I try not to judge too much on where the guys are coming from. Jason Roche, the shooting guard from the Citadel, right? That's a Citadel. That's not ACC. Well, he just took an official visit to Mizzou. He's looking at Pitt. He's looking at where else? Like Kansas State. He's looking at these high major conference options because he's a high major conference level player, even though he was playing at the Citadel. So I try not to judge too much on where these guys come from. I just try and see what we can find out as far as whether they fit at the ACC to try and fill out that roster. We'll see what he ends up with. Let's see here. Brock Madonic says, good sign for Pitt that Hakeem Williams will be taking an official visit in June. Yeah, that's really good news. I was surprised by that. So Hakeem Williams, 4-star wide receiver out of Florida. He took an unofficial visit to Pitt this spring. I think it was last month, a couple weeks ago. Huge visit for Pitt to get a 4-star receiver on campus during spring camp. No question about it. It's an unofficial visit, which means he paid his own way. He paid for his airfare. He paid for his hotel. He came up here on his own dime because he was that interested in Pitt. Big part of it was Taekwon Underwood, Pitt's new wide receivers coach. who had a relationship with Williams and brought that to Pitt and is trying to recruit him here. I didn't know how much further it would go from there. I get the impression that Williams likes taking visits. He took a lot of visits this spring. I didn't know if we'd ever see him back on Pitt's campus. I didn't know if he'd ever come back for an official visit. But, yeah, he said it, on whatever day, this is Wednesday. I think he told one of our reporters at Rivals, Ryan Wright, I think it was, that he's got a Pitt official visit, that he's looking to take. I think it's huge. It's huge to get a talented player like him back on campus. So this will be twice in like 3 months that he's been on Pitt's campus. With the Biletnikoff Award winner there, with a bunch of Biletnikoff trophies all over the place. They have 3 now. He got a chance to watch practice, so he sees what kind of quarterback play he's going to be coming in with, and he sees how this offense is going to work. I think it's huge to get him back. Are they going to land him? I don't know, but it's huge to get him back on campus for sure. Michael B. followed up another super chatter question. We appreciate that. Says, Chris, last question. I'm going to put you on the spot. If Pitt has another 11-21 basketball season next year, is Jeff Capel gone? You can answer yes or no. I can't answer yes or no. I have a hard time with a yes or no question like that. Because I don't know. There's a part of me that says the buyout's still going to be like $12 million or so, and that's still a lot of money to pay somebody to go away. That's still a lot of money to pay somebody to, to leave, to pay someone to not do something. It's a lot of money, and I don't know if you're Pitt how you justify that. Short of the results haven't been what they should be. But if it's another 11-win season, that's going to be a really challenging situation. It's going to be a really challenging situation for Heather Lyke, for the new chancellor, who, Patrick Gallagher's resigning. I forget when he's. I know it's over the summer. I forget if it was this summer or next summer. I had this down here. Okay, next year. So, Patrick Gallagher's still going to have a hand in that decision of whether they want to pay that money, if they want to pay him to go away, and then put up the money to hire someone new, presumably someone better, someone that, someone that they think can win, which will probably cost a pretty penny. I don't know. I don't know what you do in that situation. I think that's a really difficult call. And I'm, they haven't told me what they intend to do, and I really don't know what would happen in that situation. Pitman Zach94 says, interesting to see Pitt showing interest in the Minnesota running back Irving in the transfer portal. Yeah, that kind of came out, Tuesday or Wednesday. I forget which day it was. There's a running back from Minnesota who went into the transfer portal. Looks like a pretty good young player. Pitt was listed as one of the schools showing interest. I don't know what to make of that. These coaching staffs, football and basketball, probably baseball, softball, all the sports, have coaches and assistants who are just watching the portal nonstop, just constantly watching the portal, trying to find out, and looking at everybody who goes in. And I think any player they see with a pulse, they send him a text message or hit him up with a DM or something, just to reach out, just to say hi. Hey, what do you think about Pitt? That kind of thing. And all those things, whether it's a genuine, sincere, hard push to land a guy, or it's really just saying hello so we have a reply from you in case we need to get back in touch with you later, they all get reported as interest. They all get reported as contact. And I don't know what to make of those necessarily. And I don't know how far to go with, how far that is really going. And so I don't know how serious Pitt's interest is in that running back. I don't feel like they need a running back out of the transfer portal for this year or beyond. I mean, I think if you can get a really talented player, you try and get him, but I think it would be a hard sell to get a running back to come in here when you're bringing back Izzy Abanikanda and Rodney Hammond and Vincent Davis. Daniel Carter emerged this spring, and then Jordan Bailey coming in, presumably coming in as a freshman running back in June. I think it'd be a tough sell to get a really talented running back to come in with that kind of room. already established. So I don't know. I don't know what to make of that one. Brock Madonic says, should we be concerned that as of late there hasn't been much buzz from recruiting sites with Rodney Gallagher and Tamir Robinson regarding Pitt? Will Pitt get an official visit from both? Yeah, it's been interesting that neither one of those guys went to any of Pitt's spring practices or spring camps or anything like that. Rodney Gallagher did tweet on Wednesday that he's going to go to Pitt for an unofficial visit on the 18th, so that's next Monday, I guess. Haven't seen much out of Tamir Robinson. I do think both guys will take official visits to Pitt in June. I would expect both of them to be there. I don't know if they're going to get one, if they're going to get both, if they're going to get none. I'm not sure what's going to happen there. I've been pretty confident in Pitt's chances with Rodney Gallagher thus far. I'm still pretty confident there, but we'll see. We'll see where it goes. But I do think they'll both be on campus for official visits in June. I would expect that. Brock also follows up, says, when will Pitt land a prominent quarterback recruit? I feel it hasn't happened since we got Davis Bevell and that didn't work out. Will it happen in this class or next year's class? So I don't know. 2022, they kind of punted on that recruiting class as far as quarterbacks go, just intent to go to the transfer portal, which they did, and got Keaton Slovis. They've got Nate Yarnell as a younger quarterback on the roster, but really nothing else in terms of long-term options. I don't know what they're going to do there. Frank Cignetti, when he first got to Pitt, offered a bunch of really top guys in the 2023 recruiting class, and that was interesting to see. They've missed on, it doesn't seem likely they're going to get really any of those guys he offered. There's a couple guys who did visit, Emory Williams and Hank Brown and who's the other one? Kenny Minchie. And so those are guys to watch, I guess, as you move through the spring into the summer to see who's going to come for official visits. My guess is Cignetti, he's on the road now, looking at quarterbacks, evaluating quarterbacks, and he's going to do that throughout this month and into May. And my guess is he'll find some guys he likes in those settings. That's what you can do now. It's the evaluation period. Once spring camp ends, college coaches go on the road and just tour high schools and watch guys work out, watch guys practice, go to afternoon practices, spring football practices. They watch them do weight room sessions. They talk to the coaches and all this different stuff. And that's how they spend their spring. They're on the road a ton. And some of them stay out for 2 weeks at a time. A guy like Charlie Partridge, there's no point in coming home when you're going to be in Miami for, the next 3 weeks. Why come home for the weekend? You might as well just stay down there. So it's hard for those guys, but I think people think that spring camp ends and coaches just relax and take it easy. They don't. They work just as much and they travel a ton. They're on the road constantly. And so that's what they're out there doing, and Cignetti's out looking at quarterbacks right now, and I think I wouldn't be surprised to see him find some new quarterback options in the next few weeks or next month or two. And we'll see what comes out of that group. Mike S. says, what odds do you put on Jeff Capel landing the twins from IMG? Yeah, the two Spanish kids. I don't know. I haven't been able to really get a read on those guys. They need to get them up for a visit. That's the next thing we need to see out of Jeff Capel and his staff. They need to get recruits and transfers on campus for visits. They've been going out. There's a live recruiting period now, a live evaluation period. So they're going to events and they're scouting 2023 kids. But they need guys who are going to help right now. They need guys who are going to help this season. And they need to get them on campus for a visit in order to make that happen. So, I don't know what the odds are now of landing those two kids. I think if they get them on campus, there's at least the odds will go up from wherever they are right now. General So's Chicken says, I know it was only the spring game, but the quarterback didn't look too impressive. I don't know if you mean quarterback or quarterbacks. Nick Patty was 4 of 9 for 108, 108 yards. Of course, 98 of those 108 yards were on two passes, a 55-yard pass to Kanate Mumfield and 43 yards to Jared Wayne. Keaton Slovis went 10 of 21 for 64 yards and an interception. Not a great day for him. But again, vanilla playbook that I think limited what these quarterbacks were able to do. Vanilla playbook that held them back. They didn't have as many ways to attack the defense. I think the interception that Keaton Slovis threw that Shane Simon picked off, I think it was pretty clearly a pass and a play that Simon has seen this spring. And so he was able to read the play and read the pass and make a play on it. Slovis still should have probably seen him, but it was a 3-step drop. It was a quick, drop back and throw type of thing. It was a quick hitter, and Simon saw it, I think, all the way and picked it off. I think when I look at Slovis, I think he made some nice throws. There were some passes that should have been caught but weren't. I think Gavin Bartholomew had a should have been touchdown. I think Jalen Barden had a should have been touchdown. I thought there was one more that should have been a touchdown or was close to being a touchdown. The Jalen Barden one, I in the end zone. I think Jordan Addison catches that 10 times out of 10. So you get into a regular season game with the regular offensive line, and you get Jordan Addison out there catching passes from Slovis. I think he takes advantage of what was ultimately a really nice, well thrown ball. I think Addison catches that and scores on it. So it's tough. We all wanted to see the quarterbacks. We all wanted to see them in action. We all wanted to finally see these guys throw, and form our own opinions about them instead of just hearing what we've heard or people are saying or the coaches are saying, and I think the coach is like this or I think the coach is like that. We wanted to all actually see them, but unfortunately, it was in a really difficult environment with the offensive line and the vanilla playbook and as Pat Narduzzi said, the mishmashed wide receivers. It was a really difficult situation to form any kind of genuine, sincere evaluation or thoughtful evaluation on those two guys. So I think you look for a couple of the good things that they did, and I think they each did a couple nice things, and then you just look to see what they do in the season. Let's see what else we got here with a few more minutes. Other comments. Zachary Haar says, any thoughts on where Pitt football falls in the top 25 preseason rankings? I don't know. I've thought about it from time to time, and there were some way too early preseason rankings there, this kind of stuff in February or January, right after the national championship game. And that stuff was way too early. I think when the more, people who really do research and look into things, and because that was sort of really, those way too early preseason rankings were pretty abrupt, and I don't think very well researched. But I think once you get into the summer and AP voters and whatnot are putting together their polls and really kind of researching what teams have coming back, what successful teams from last year are returning in terms of personnel and where they added and what they lost. I think Pitt's going to look pretty favorable. I think they end up, truly they should probably be in the top 20. I would think. Even if it's 19 or 18, they should be in the top 20. They lost a Heisman Trophy candidate at quarterback, yes, and that's huge. It's huge. It's really difficult to replace a Heisman Trophy candidate at quarterback. But they also returned the Biletnikoff Award winner. They returned the entire offensive line. They brought in one of the best wide receivers in the portal. They brought in one of the best quarterbacks in the portal. They returned they returned a lot of guys from the defense, and they look like they should be pretty good. So they return a freshman All-American at tight end. They return a bunch of running backs who combined for 2,000 all-purpose, or 2,000 yards of total offense. I think there's enough there to say this, to at least put this team in the top 20. To at least put them in the top 20, and maybe I think a few voters might even have them in the top 15, and I think that would make sense just for whatever everything I just laid out. It's a team that went 11-3, won the ACC championship. They were ranked in the top 15 at the end of the year, and they're, yes, losing a big piece in Kenny Pickett, but Keaton Slovis was an all-conference player, and one of the top quarterbacks in the portal. Konate Mumfield was, one of the best freshman wide receivers in the country last year, and again, one of the best receivers in the portal, and they returned the entire offensive line. That's a good way to be. And I think that's a good formula for success heading into your next season. And then we'll find out really quick. We'll find out really quick where this team is when they play West Virginia and Tennessee right off the bat. And I think if they open the season in the top 20, or sniff in the top 15 and they win those two games, they're a top 10 team by week 3. Then it's just a matter of holding on. It's just a matter of doing everything you can to not drop out of that spot. If they open in the top 20, or if they open in the top 25, like between 20 and 25, I think they win those 2 games, they're in the top 15, or they should be at least, I would think. But we'll see. It'll be interesting to see once some of the real polls start coming out over the summer. It'll be pretty interesting to see. All right, I think we just got a couple minutes left. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. We do this show every Wednesday night. We also post a lot of videos and interviews and things like that on the YouTube channel. But like I say, we're here doing this show every Wednesday night at 8:30. It gives you a chance to, if you subscribe to the YouTube channel and you turn on notifications, you'll get like a little notification on your phone that says, hey, Panther-Lair, Panther-Lair.com on YouTube is going live, or whatever, Pitt football or on YouTube is going live or something. You'll know. You'll be like, oh yeah, I forgot about the show. It's tonight. Sweet. So subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Even if you're listening to the podcast later in the week, subscribe to the YouTube channel, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. And if you're looking for the best coverage of Pitt sports news on the internet, most comprehensive coverage of Pitt sports news on the internet, go to Panther-Lair.com. I got the logo right at the bottom of the screen. If you're listening to the podcast, I'll say it again for you. Panther-Lair.com. Pittsburgh.rivals.com. It's the best place for Pitt sports news. You can read all the content. You can go to the message boards and discuss it. So thanks to everybody who jumped into the live stream chat tonight. It's been a lot of fun to have conversations about Pitt sports. We appreciate that for sure. Thanks to everybody who listens to the podcast through the week. Don't forget the Panthers Insider Show on Saturday morning on 93.7 The Fan at 8 a.m. We've got that going on, and we'll keep it going all through the offseason, just like we'll keep this show going all through the offseason too. So thanks everybody for listening. Make sure you check out Panther-Lair.com. Have a great rest of the week. Have a great weekend. And we'll talk to you next Wednesday night for the Panther-Lair Show.